energy efficiency is really one of the best ways for people to both save on their individual bills and also how states can bring down costs long term. We have people that have really high energy burdens, and it's important that they can get a slice of the pie and have access to the cleanest, healthiest, and most affordable technologies long term.
Did you know there's an opportunity coming up to make your home more energy efficient, and the federal government might just foot most or all of the bill for repairs, upgrades, and even state-of-the-art technology? I'm not kidding. This is not some scam. I'm not going to steal your identity. I've got enough going on over here. A few years ago, the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, earmarked billions of dollars for two programs designed to reduce overall energy use and provide point-of-sale coupons for high-efficiency electric appliances like heat pumps and electric stoves to folks who could use a little help affording them. That money, though, has been stuck in purgatory under review by the Trump administration, like a lot of IRA funding. It might have felt like it was going to stay frozen forever, but it sounds like the Department of Energy is finally about to start letting it flow to states, which are designing their own unique programs to optimize disbursement to best serve their needs. On this episode of the Factor This podcast, Advanced Energy United policy principal Kate Shonk explains why the funding was stalled, where it's headed, and how it can really help people at a time when electricity prices are climbing almost everywhere and affordability is now on the menu for dinner table discussion. Kate dives into examples from a few of the roughly dozen states that are rolling out programs to take advantage of the efficiency rebates and shares what's working. New Mexico was the first state to apply. Rebecca Puck Stair, the director for the state of New Mexico's Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department, also joins the show to explore the real, tangible human impact programs like these can have on communities in need. She details her state's efforts to optimize and consolidate its offerings to maximize the use of federal dollars, and reveals a little of the behind-the-scenes bureaucracy involved in translating policies from paper to practice. I'm Paul Gerke, and you're listening to Factor This. Hey everybody, it's great to not see your faces again on the Factor This podcast. It is kind of weird to just stare into a monitor and expect that you guys are getting the same experience out of this that I am. But after being away on paternity for so long, it is so great to have another really solid, in-depth conversation about something that matters in the energy ecosphere. And I'm excited to have this conversation today because of the massive impact that this story has. I'm joined by Kate Shonk, my friend over at Advanced Energy United, who is an expert on this home energy rebate topic that we're about to get into today, as well as Rebecca Puck Stair, who we're going to call Puck for the rest of the show because I've been told it is the nickname and she doesn't know who Rebecca is. So Puck is also on the show to talk about how those programs are coming together in New Mexico and just how the sort of pregnant pause that these funds have been under has been a real issue for sort of making things work out there. I'd like to start with introductions, if you don't mind. Kate, would you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about what it is that you do and the relevance that you bring to the topic we're talking about today?
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, Paul. Great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm Kate Shonk. I'm a policy principal with Advanced Energy United. We are a national trade association and represent businesses that provide the full scale of advanced energy solutions, from grid scale renewables to distributed energy resources or DERs, like heat pumps and other home energy technologies. We advocate across the country for these technologies, primarily in state legislatures and public utility commissions, but we also have a presence on the federal level. And I specialize in our building electrification work, which is primarily focused on expanding opportunities for the most efficient, clean technologies in our homes, but also making sure that we're managing and planning for this transition so that vulnerable and low-income customers have access to building electrification technologies. But yeah, thank you so much for having me and great to have this discussion with you both.
Of course. And Puck, please tell us a little bit about what you do out in New Mexico. I know you're not in New Mexico right now, although that is a bit of a New Mexican vibe, the background there.
No. Victorian, we do Adobe.
Yeah, I know. No, please tell me a bit about yourself.
Mostly in New Mexico. I listen to the Factor This
Oh, come
podcast,
on
so
now.
delighted to be here. Long time listeners, I say.
Thank you.
I'm the director of the State Energy Office for New Mexico, and I'm on the show today, the resident example state. So of the rebates programs, in most states, it's flowing through the state energy offices, and we're all a little bit different in the 56 states and territories. And our office oversees everything. Essentially is in charge of the New Mexico's flip into our renewable future and our kind of energy powerhouse of a state. So we do everything from utility regulation, analysis, utility scale planning, and all the way down to residential work, including like an ESCO program, tax credits, loans, grants, all of the above. And the rebates program is one of 35 programs that I'm helping run at the state level.
Only 35.
Well,
No big deal.
electrification's a big deal. There's, you got wind turbines, you got EVs,
Yeah.
you've got, cement plants, electricity, if you've noticed, this touches everything. So we
Yeah,
have
it
our fingers
does.
in sort of everybody's business.
Yeah, I would love to zoom out a little bit. And I think, Kate, you're the person to go to first here to sort of explain the issue at hand and really the opportunity at hand when we're talking about these home energy rebates potentially finally being released. Zoom out, give us a scope of the issue that we're talking about and what this timeline has looked like and where we're at on it right now.
Sure. Yeah, of course. So, about a month ago in mid-April, Secretary of Energy Chris Wright did assure members of the House Appropriations Committee that his agency is completing its review of home energy rebate programs. Um, and he specifically noted that the funds could be released in a matter of weeks. These funds, going back, were appropriated in the Inflation Reduction Act and then fully obligated to states under the Biden administration. But with the new administration, they had been paused for agency review. So there's this new commitment now that the administration will release the remaining funds to states. And so far, we have, I think, about a dozen states plus DC that have launched programs, but still there are plenty of states that do not have these programs up and running. And so we're really looking to the administration to follow through and release these funds for states. So far, we haven't seen any additional updates since that statement from Secretary Wright about a month ago, but we're optimistic that we'll see funds coming soon to states.
There is no better way to jinx the timing, in my experience, than saying on a recording that you have not received any updates, because as soon as I end this recording, there's going to be an email that goes out that's going to just completely
Of course.
submarine that entire statement. That said, how much money are we talking about here, Kate? Are we talking about hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions? How much? Yeah, Puck is just pointing upward, more and more and more. How much money and where could it all go?
Yeah, so the home energy rebates programs provides $8.8 billion to
Excuse
state
me,
energy
with a B?
offices with a B, yes, to state energy offices across the country to run these programs. So to provide these rebates for households to access energy efficient technologies such as heat pumps, such as insulation, weatherization, all of these great technologies that can bring down utility costs.
And that money is available to all 50 US states, presumably. Anyone can get a slice of that pie.
So the application for funding for states was open to every state and U.S. territory. Some states have opted not to participate in the program. Um, I believe those include Idaho and South Dakota that have opted not to participate or apply for funding, but all other states have applied and received confirmation that their applications were approved. So for now, the majority of states are just waiting for those funds to actually be allocated to run their programs.
And one of those states that has gotten ahead of things is New Mexico. And Puck, you're obviously intimately involved in that whole process. Take me through what that's been like for you, the holdup from the initial promise of the disbursement of these funds through the IRA to where your programs stand today.
So Kate laid the groundwork really nicely. we think about it as the home rebates programs, but it's actually 112 different programs. So you have the 56 states and territories roughly, who each then have two programs that there's different names for the program. So I refer to them by their number. There's the 50121 and the 50122. Anyway, so each state recipient has two, and then within that, those can be further subdivided into single family and multifamily. So here in New Mexico, we have kind of 4 sub programs, and each of them are at a different level. This gets dizzyingly detailed really quickly, as you can tell. And so we were very fortunate to be of one of those 4 programs. We've got kind of 1.5 of them up and running already. We were fortunate enough. We moved really aggressively. So we were the first state to apply for both the 50122 and the 50123, and the first state to launch one of those in retail. And I would love to talk more about that later. And so we have, of the kind of 4 potential funding streams, we've got 1.5 of them up and running. But then even within that, the single family, for example, there's only certain products that we've been able to launch at this point in time. It's a very complicated program, and each state custom designs their own program. And so it's also very difficult for the DOE to administer, because at all 56 states and each of their sub 4 programs, so you're talking potentially hundreds of different detailed ways to do this, are moving things forward. So to give you an example, in New Mexico, you can spend the money on both moderate income and low income households. And in New Mexico, for example, we've made the choice, we've designed the program to focus purely at low income, because on the state level, we've got other programs that moderate income folks can access. So we wanted to sort of spread the wealth, if you will. And so that's different from like my neighbor over in Arizona, who may have set up their program very differently. So we're sort of partially up and running, to answer your question.
It sounds like there's not a whole lot of federal oversight as to how these programs should function, even though there's a large dollar amount attached to it. What goes into trying to figure out what constitutes the right way to do this for a state? Is it about the state's individual needs? Is it reflective of some of the other programs you have running, as you mentioned, Puck?
Actually, there's quite a lot of federal oversight, and that's part of the reason why not all the programs are up and running. So way back in the beginning, it's like any grant application, you draft your application. So we drafted a proposal. We sat down and sorted out what would be the most efficient, most productive use of these funds in New Mexico, and the way that our state is made up with our climate zones and our heating and cooling needs and our particular like housing stock. We have a lot of adobe and we have a lot of manufactured homes. So we created a program that's going to be most efficient for New Mexico, which will not be the same as like my friends over in Michigan or Hawaii that are going to have different housing and climate needs. So you write up that application, you submit it to the DOE, and then you wait breathlessly for several months while they review it. And then there's a long back and forth period while they look at your proposal, they tweak a few things, you finally come to agreement, then you do the same thing with the budget. And then the DOE initially had what's called tranched this program, which is they would release it's technically either a 4 or 8 year program, again, depending on what the state elected, in our case 4. And then the DO would say, okay, your first year of funds is released, but we're going to hold back the other 3 just to sort of watch you go and make sure that we get the monitoring and the paperwork and all of that correct. So there's actually quite a lot of federal oversight, which as a taxpayer, I'm not mad at, as long as the DOE is properly staffed and resources to move at the speed that we need to move at.
I love saying something that's horribly incorrect less than 10 minutes into a show and being corrected by a guest right away. Like, no, actually, it's the opposite of the way that you interpreted it. But no, I think that's actually really helpful insight to sort of understand where, like, there may not be the most crisp organization and timelines from the federal level, and certainly not the certainty that you guys would like, but there is some pretty serious oversight as to how that money gets spent. Is there one technology or another that has moved a little easier for you guys in New Mexico? Or perhaps, Kate, you can address that too from a national level. Are some of these more understood and easier to sort of work into a program than others?
I'll go first for New Mexico, and then I'm actually curious what Kate has to say. But it's less about the technology and more about how do you physically get it into someone's home. So, for example, the program can cover things like insulation, which a homeowner can self-install under the rules of the program. And so that's been very easy to get out the door. We've got a lot of homes that have gone to Lowe's, gotten their coupon, gotten a discount at the register for installation. I'm not making this up. And then and we can talk about how that works. Then self-install it. And there's the way that the program is set up, they can do that and satisfy all the requirements of kind of following the money. Any measure that requires a contractor to install suddenly gets much more complicated. So, for example, heat pumps, we would love to do more heat pumps. Heat pumps are proving a challenge because all of a sudden now the money is potentially flowing in a different way to a contractor. We also have in the United States a huge shortage of HVAC contractors, and the ones that are there are maybe have been burned by rebate programs in the past, or the money comes very slow. So in New Mexico, we've had to address each of those one by one by looking into training up more contractors. We've hired a third party to basically just reimburse the contractors within 24 or 48 hours versus a kind of more government style, like 30 or 90 days. So certain measures are up and flowing very easily and others are not, but it's not because of the tech. It's because of how you physically get that in someone's home.
Kate, has the experience been similar from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Puck said is something we're observing across the country, where contractor availability is really a constraint right now. But I think many other states are also investing in that contractor education. And I think as we sort of phase these programs in and see this, sustainable long-term investment in these technologies, we'll see that workforce grow, and see the skills available to help install these technologies. And yes, I do think also installation and weatherization is really popular and a great first step for a lot of households to take through these programs prior to adopting something like a heat pump that could come next. Um, we also know that a lot of households also have issues that need to be remediated prior to
Mm-hmm.
weatherization, such as mold remediation. Some homes have pest issues. There's some issues that need to be taken care of also prior to weatherization. So I know that's also been a barrier. But yeah, I think the contractor issue is something that we hope over time we'll be able to build up a strong workforce to install these technologies.
I would love to dive a little more into the workforce and into the weeds about how these
Mm-hmm.
programs actually work. But before we get there, can we zoom out one more time, Kate, and just talk about the larger opportunity presented here? It's obviously a lot of money, but there's levels to efficiency, and as you mentioned, there's levels to the technology and the spend and the work involved to get these things off the ground too. From your seat, what is the large opportunity here, and why is this so important that these funds are finally rolling out?
Yeah, great question. I think it's important that these funds are rolled out now because, as we're seeing across the country, many states are concerned about energy affordability. That's what we're hearing. It's, from legislators, from public utility commissioners, from all decision makers. People are concerned about affordability. Energy efficiency is really one of the fastest ways that people can reduce their bills and bring down their household energy costs. So having these programs available so people can adopt more efficient technologies, can get insulation in their homes is critical not just for their own individual utility bill savings, but also to mitigate this problem where we're seeing load growth on the electric grid. We're seeing a lot of concern around resource advocacy on the electric side. And again, bringing down our overall energy consumption can help mitigate those problems and help bring down electric system costs long term. So I think investing in these technologies will pay dividends in the future. And yeah, states can also double down on these programs. As these rebates are released, there are other policies that they can also invest in, which happy to talk about later as well, that can complement programs like these. So that's
You
sort
guys
of
are
the broad picture, but
You
yeah.
guys are dropping so many breadcrumbs to this trail of like stuff to talk about later. I'm like scrambling to write notes, like talk about later, talk about later. Eventually, later is going to be right in our laps, so we're going to have to try to remember some of this stuff. But in the interim, Puck, I saw you nodding your head a lot during Kate's response there. Anything you want to add about the larger
Yeah,
opportunity here?
I just want to humanize it a bit and just give an example of a gentleman that we installed a heat pump for using this program who lived in Portales. He was of retirement age, so living on, a fixed income. And we initially went in and he was living in a kind of quasi-manufactured home that had terrible insulation, and the heating and cooling bills were so much that he was not able to afford, or he was about to not be able to afford to stay in his house. And so he was talking to relatives or to like the local, retirement home to see if he could move out of there because he couldn't afford the utility bills. And so we started working with him to do the whole package, everything that Kate was talking about, from insulation, full electrification of his house, heat pump to get his bills down. And we ran all the numbers. And then all of a sudden he stopped calling us back for a while. And we thought, oh, what did we do? Did we do something wrong? Did he's not interested? We
Yeah.
couldn't get a response for several weeks. And finally he called back and said, okay, I'm back from the hospital and I'm ready for you all to come install. And we said, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I just had to get my other leg amputated.
Oh
And
no.
so here's this man who's a fresh amputee learning how to navigate his home
Oh
now
my.
with one leg instead of two. And we came in and just overhauled his whole home using these funds, which he would not have been able to afford in any way. And now he has not only the dignity to be able to stay in his home, which he's been in for decades, but affordable electric bills and a place that he can comfortably recuperate from having had his leg amputated. And that's just one story. We hope to do that 5,000 times in New Mexico alone, not to mention across the state. Like, this is real dollars that really makes a difference to the daily lives and the affordability of, average Americans.
That's a really profound example. Thank you for sharing that, Puck. That gave me goosebumps. I mean, like, you don't think about like the case by case applications of this. It seems like a lot of, paperwork and hair wringing as you try to figure things out. But like just to be able to do that for one person seems like the whole program is worth it. To think that there would be
Yes.
potentially millions of such applications is pretty wild. Can I ask though, is the process always so hands-on for you guys, or can some of these be pretty like touchless transactions where people can kind of, take off and do their own thing?
It depends on the measure and it depends on the program. So
Yeah.
again, there were two programs. So insulation is fairly straightforward. We've had to build a custom online software program where someone can go online. They have to prove that they're low income and there's certain paperwork required there. But we've tried to make it really easy. And especially we've tried to design it so you can do it on a cell phone, because typically low income families are doing most of their work on cell phones, not on laptops. So you can take a picture of your Snap card or something like that. You get, and then the program spits out, so, a coupon, literally a barcode. If you choose your retailer, and you can literally walk into retailers, again, like local retailers like Bios Home Appliances is a local store here, or all the way up to Lowe's. You literally scan the barcode that's on your phone at the register and you get the discount right there. To make it that simple, our philosophy has been, we take the complexity onto ourselves. And so we're doing a lot of work back of house to make it that simple for what we call Joe New Mexico, for our customer. um, and so it can be very simple for installation. Then you get your installation at the register, you just take it home and install it yourself, all the way up to, if we're going to do a whole home install, it's going to be involved and we'll bring in a contractor. And in New Mexico, I'll say, and I think many other states are doing this, we're stacking and braiding with other programs available. So Kate mentioned that a lot of times homes need work before we can even come in. Like, we've literally had homes with holes in the roof. And so there's no point in putting insulation until you fix the roof. This particular program doesn't patch roofs, but here in New Mexico, we have another program that does. So we're coordinating with about 8 different programs to provide, from the homeowner's point of view, a kind of seamless experience. And again, taking the complexity on ourselves, that's meant a lot of work. I've brought in energy coaches to help bring people through it, and also, like I said, special finance people to kind of bring it all together so that it's really simple from the homeowner's point of view.
This is a question you both might want to get a bite of, but Kate, I'll start with you. I'm of the mind, I guess maybe just of the age perhaps, where I'm a millennial and I grew up without the internet, and then there was the internet, and then there was like the first phishing scams, and now it feels like anytime I log on, someone's trying to steal my identity or rob me blind in one way or another, and I'm just like the most skeptical online consumer that exists. And I feel like a lot of people in my age bracket are sort of grown to be that way. When I see something like $8.8 billion in home energy rebates are now available in a state near you for something as simple as insulation or as complicated as a heat pump, I kind of look at it side-eyed and say, that seems like a scam. And if I give these people my information, I'm going to lose my credit card, not get a home rebate. Kate, can you explain for our listeners and viewers why this is actually a real thing and how they can sort of circumvent that skepticism if that's what's holding them back from actually taking advantage of this money?
Yeah, good question. I think something like that can definitely seem maybe too good to be true,
Right.
but I think that's why it's so important to have communication from a trusted source like the state energy office in New Mexico or from the government, like the DOE, having information up on their website, and also communications from utilities. People generally do trust the communication that's coming from their utility service. So having their utilities sort of communicate to them, these are the programs that are available. This is how they could potentially stack also with the utility offered programs, I think can be really effective. So it's really important to have those trusted sources out front, making sure that people are hearing from them and know that this is legit. But yeah, it's difficult to navigate all of that, and people don't necessarily know what's real and what's not. So we need those trusted government sources especially, but also utilities communicating with customers.
Puck, have you encountered a trust barrier?
100%. Well, actually, no less so because we saw this coming. Because the pitch is like, "Hey, give me the last four of your social, and you get $8,000 off a heat pump." Like, how's that gonna go, right? So
Yeah,
we realized
I'm in.
we needed to, and I appreciate Kate trust in government, but studies have shown that government is like the second least trusted voice in the room, industry being first. So what we did early on is we used a small piece of our administrative funds to pitch in to help hire what we call energy coaches, which are local folk who are already working in the communities here in New Mexico, already known and established. And we're actually spending no money on marketing or outreach. We're flowing the information through those partners who are already known in the community, because when they say it, is a lot more trusted than when industry or when government shows up. So that's one thing we've done. The other thing we've done is built a whole new website, cleanenergy.nm.gov, which includes not just the rebates, but all the other programs that we offer. I said at the top of the show that we have 35 different buckets, and this is our one-stop shop for finding everything all in one place and finding out what you're eligible for, and also maybe stacking and braiding. And there's a coach. You could pick up the phone and call a person who can walk you through the whole process, because it's wonderful when you can combine like an ESCO program and a HERE rebate and a tax credit, but it takes paperwork. But there's some people who've done it, and you can get kind of a whole home retrofit for like pennies on the dollar, and then talk about affordability, and then you're just right into the saving money on your electricity bill afterwards. So with the website and the coaches, we've avoided, for the most part, that trust issue. But it's a challenge.
I love having Puck here to talk about exactly how New Mexico is thinking about these programs, but I don't want to forget that there are a lot of other states that are doing things a little differently. Kate, you had said to me when we were talking before the show that there are about a dozen states that have some sort of program up and running or in the works. Can you talk to me a little bit about those other programs, how they differ from what's going on in New Mexico, and maybe how some of these other leaders are thinking about this?
Yeah, sure. So um yeah, there, like Puck said at the top, there are two different programs here that can also be broken out into several other programs. There's the home efficiency rebates and then the home electrification and appliance rebates. So only a handful of states have both of those programs relatively available. Those are Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Georgia, and North Carolina. So I know, I'm from Michigan personally, and,
Wait, I'm from Michigan
I
too. Where are you from?
I'm from St. Clair, Michigan,
Oh, no
which is
kidding.
about an hour north of
My
Detroit.
mom grew up over there. Yeah, I'm from mid-Michigan, just outside of Flint. I went to Grand Valley State. I lived in Alpena, where I worked in TV. Anyway, small world. Hey, fellow
Yeah, very
Michigander on the
small.
show.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yeah, I, went to the University of Michigan
I went
and
to U of M Flint. That's so cool. No kidding.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go
No
to the
way.
cool campus. I just got to go see football games there. I was more of a commuter kid. But anyway,
No.
totally submarine
I'm
you there.
feeling jealous. I'll say my mom grew up in Ann Arbor. There.
Oh, see, okay. I was gonna say with a nickname like Puck, I thought you might know a thing or two about being in a Great Lakes state.
Ooh.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Michigan is great. Love to say also love Ann Arbor and what they're doing there. But yeah, so Michigan is one of those states that has both of these programs available, and they've been one of the early movers as well. So they originally did some pilots, I believe, in Holland and Detroit, and so they were testing out, how are these rebates going to work? How are we applying them? And I think again, we're seeing some of those contractor availability issues that we talked about, and I think that's been sort of the biggest barrier. Um, Michigan also has relatively high electric rates compared to gas rates, and so it can be difficult for customers to save on the operating costs of electric technologies. Um, and there's, a lot of work happening in Michigan to improve rate design to accommodate these new technologies, and to help people save on their bills because we need people to have access to these technologies and to actually be saving money. Um, so I think Michigan is a really interesting example where even despite high electric rates, there's a lot of work happening to make this program work and to make all the pieces fall together. Um, so that's one area. I know Colorado is one of the states that also has uh, just the home energy appliance rebates, electrification appliance rebates available. They have a whole website up that's super helpful that shows the available funds remaining. And Colorado is also one of the states that has this one stop shop that Puck was discussing, where they have a whole website dedicated where customers can go and put their information in and find out not just what rebates they're available for, but all of the other programs that can stack and braid together with the rebates. Um, so I think they're another good example of taking all of the available funds and making sure that customers can actually access them. Uh, just anecdotally, in a previous role, I worked for a utility consumer advocate in Illinois, telling folks about all of the different programs that were available to them, whether it was Solar for All or energy efficiency offerings. And it's really, really difficult to get customers to enroll in all of the programs that they're available that they can actually enroll in, but also just to understand all of the different interactions between programs. Uh, not just the rebates and the upfront incentives, but also the rates that folks are available to enroll in, and everything in between. So yeah, I think we have some early mover states, and of course these programs are still being developed and they're in early stages. But I think we're excited to see where we can go, especially once the rest of the funds are released.
I'm glad you ended on that note because it's a very natural segue into the next thing I wanted to ask Puck, which is about the nitty gritty of a planning
Mm,
process that is
mm.
interrupted in the way that this one must have been because you're planning to have this money. How are we going to use it? How are we going to get approved to use it? And then hold on, wait, maybe we don't have this money and now maybe we do. And when is it coming? That's got to mess with the processes behind the scenes. We're talking about people building these programs, right, Puck? Like that's not easy.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. um, One of our programs has been operating on a series of 90-day extensions from the DOE for the last year. So we sort of come to the end of a 3-month period, and it's like, are we going to get the green light to keep developing, keep rolling, keep um, and we sometimes don't know until the last minute, and then fortunately we get an extension. And the DOE's, I think, been maybe not staffed properly or understaffed, so they're having a hard time responding to our questions. There are a ton of really detailed questions that pop up, and I'll give you an example about the geotag photos in a second. But yeah, the uncertainty, and it also means you can have a customer, or a ratepayer, whatever, a homeowner in the pipeline who's applied and maybe has their coupon, and they have maybe 30 days to take the coupon to the store and go get their insulation or their cook stove or whatever it is. And if we don't get an extension sort of midway through that, they've got their coupon, they go to the store thinking, and they've made their plans to install, or they've done their research, or maybe they've even ordered the equipment and the store has brought it in, and then it might pause halfway through. So it's potentially very disruptive. Fortunately, in New Mexico, we haven't actually had a disruption of any ongoing program, just a lot of nail biting every 90 days around that. And then, like Kate said in the beginning, you've kind of got sub programs. We do have our entire 50121. Sorry, I call them by the numbers because you'll hear homes, HERA, here. Like there's different names for them all. But 50121, we've been in a waiting period. We've been in kind of the holding room, waiting for the green light to go cross the finish line. And so we really just don't know how we're going to get going with that. I'll give you an example of being one of the first states out of the gate, and all of the questions that we are all discovering together, us and the DOE and the HVAC contractors. So for one of our national labs, PNNL is serving as the central database to capture which addresses and also keep track, because each address can only get a certain amount of money. It's capped at $14,000 per home. And so they're the central repository. They're the keeper tracker of that and some other things. And so we have to upload data to them, every day or every week. We had to build computer systems behind the scenes that interact. And one of the requirements, if you're going to install from the DOE, is a geotagged photo before and after. And so we've had a lot of challenges, getting on the phone with like Grandma Garcia and trying to explain to her how to turn the geotagging on her phone. Imagine. And you go into the settings. And so we've had lots of phone calls. We've even had to drive out to someone's house once to sit down with them and say that you click this on your phone to take the photo, because they've got to upload it in their own system. And we were doing it for a long time, and PNNL kept saying, we're not getting the geotagging. It's not working. And we kept going out to Grandma Garcia's house and trying to figure out what's going on. And then finally, about 6 months into this hair pulling exercise, someone from the bowels of PNNL realized that, as one of their cybersecurity, setups, that lab, when you upload files to that lab, it automatically scrubs the metadata attached to the file. Of course. Nobody knew this going in. The DOE doesn't know this. We didn't know this. No, we are all trying to figure out what is happening. We finally got it sorted, but it's like that every day of just the nuts and bolts of getting this going. And so you can imagine like an interruption in the middle of all of that adds to the layer of challenge.
Puck, I wanted to ask, why did New Mexico apply so early and so aggressively here? What was the opportunity that you recognized ahead of a bunch of other states?
I mean, I think what Kate's been talking about on the call, which is we recognize that this is a huge opportunity for the state. So we have 800,000 households. Of them, about half our population is classified as low income. So that's 400,000 households that are what we call energy burdened, where they're paying a disproportionate amount of their monthly income on energy bills. And it's really holding us back. It's holding them back. It's holding the state back. As you can imagine, folks are paying more than they need to for energy bills. So we just saw this opportunity and just went for it as quickly as we could. And we're fortunate enough to get across the finish line on the applications for both programs. And then we've got kind of 1.5 of them launched, like I said. But I will say these sound like big numbers that we're throwing around, and New Mexico is getting about 87 million. That's M, not B, but it's still a lot of money. But at the end of the day, when you run the numbers and sort of check the average of what you think could go to each household, that is maybe 5,000 to 10,000 homes, which in New Mexico is 2% of the need. So the need is enormous. And I will just say, as a country and as an American, energy efficiency, like Kate said, is one of our shortcuts to economic thriving. It's such a no-brainer of just put that pink foamy insulation in your attic, the Pink Panther color, right? And all of a sudden that household has an extra 20, $50 per month. That adds up. That could go to groceries, that can go to gas, that can go to education, it could go to opening a small business. And I think that kind of economic lift across the whole country will just be amazing once we can get this going.
I do want to talk about affordability. I'm glad you went there, Puck. It's crazy that we got 35 minutes into this show without really
Yeah.
sinking our teeth into a larger affordability discussion. And we don't have to belabor this or anything, but I mean, we just saw the PJ Market Monitor come out this past week and say that
Mm.
electricity rates in the largest grid in the United States are up almost 80% year over year, quarter to quarter. Living here in New Jersey myself, I see it on my own bills. We follow, the PJM market issues, going on for years now. Everything from interconnection queues to trying to figure out how they're going to get renewables and storage online. Things seem like a mess, and not just in PJM. Unless you're living in Texas right now, that things aren't getting online as expeditiously as you would probably like. That said, this is a piece of that affordability discussion, and a piece that I feel like you can take some agency over. I can't control my electricity prices from the potential data center moving in down the street unless I get out there and protest it or something. But I can control my spend in this way. It feels like a very empowering thing at a time when I feel like many Americans don't feel very in control over their energy expenses. One, I guess to either one of you, does that sound like a fair assessment from your seat at the table? And two, is this going to become more and more of an integral part of the conversation, because this affordability topic isn't going anywhere?
Yeah, I definitely think it will be. I think, like you said, there's the individual benefits of energy efficiency where you right now can lower your bill by practicing energy efficiency. But I think these programs don't just help individual houses, they also lower overall grid costs and reduce peak demand by improving system efficiency. So as we know, peak demand often occurs in the summer for most states when households are using a lot of air conditioning. And heat pumps, for example, can lower the amount of energy that people are using at peak times because they are typically more efficient than traditional AC. And when we also pair that with insulation and weatherization, you can further reduce peak demand. And then when we also pair those technologies and insulation with demand flexibility programs and time of use rates, allowing people to shift their usage to off peak, then we can, truly use these building electrification technologies as grid assets, which is a concept that people are increasingly talking about. And just to sort of get into why we can lower system costs, there's a few different reasons why these technologies can do that. One is you're avoiding the expensive capacity charges that grid operators are passing directly onto customers. You're also avoiding the need for running inefficient peaker plants, which are typically gas, and they're expensive to build, they're inefficient, and they only operate for a handful of hours each year. And then you're also avoiding these really expensive transmission and distribution electric system costs that, again, are passed directly on to customers. So it's, of course, in your own home, you can lower your bills, but it's also long term. We can really bring down these energy system costs that I think a lot of decision makers are concerned about.
Puck, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, Kate said it really well, and I'm going to tag team onto what she said and add two other things that we're thinking about. So, one, when we go into an individual home, we try to, whenever we can, choose to install a smart gizmo over a dumb gizmo, whether that's a panel or a thermostat or whatever it is. We have decided to spend a little bit extra rebates money up front, even if that homeowner is not going to be using the smart thermostat or the smart panel at the time, but in order to tee them up for future savings and also future flexibility to the grid. So that's one of the design choices that we made early on. And then the second thing I'll say that a potential of this program, if we all do it right and us states coordinate together and the DOE coordinates with us, is with this kind of flood of spending on energy efficiency upgrades. My hope is that we can emerge after this sort of sugar rush of all this grant money with an expanded workforce, and then a really buff and fat flowing supply chain so that we could just keep going. So after the grants money has sort of helped build all that out, we can move on into moderate income folks with enough contractors and, a cheap and abundant supply of like heat pumps and copper wiring and all of that, so that we can just keep rolling forward and it's energy efficient for everyone.
We are running out of time on the show. I want to get to a few more things if you don't mind. The workforce conversation keeps coming up, and I would love to hear from your perspectives because they are different. Just how the workforce shortage that seems to be pervasive across our industry is impacting your ability to get stuff done. And don't get me wrong, the AI conversation I feel like re-enters the conversation here because it's sort of like the double-edged sword that's driving up the electricity rates, but also maybe allowing smaller agencies to get this money out faster because it's connecting dots and synapses in people that aren't otherwise connected. Have you guys used, AI in any way, shape, or form to get this money out, or is it just good old-fashioned people power?
Paul, I'm going to push back just a little bit on
Please.
uh, data centers don't necessarily always mean your rates going up.
That's
It's
true.
about
You're
how
right.
you situate the data center on the grid. And that's a whole nother conversation, a whole nother podcast. But I just want to
That's a whole
flag
other
that it's
show.
not always
Yeah.
one to one.
It can,
Yeah,
yeah, data centers can bring rates down. 100%. Totally agree.
they can, yes. And so, just side note, in New Mexico, we're trying to set up the regulatory policy so that that's what they would do here,
There you go.
because we have anyway. But in terms of using tech on this program, we are trying. It really comes down to old-fashioned, sort of guys or gals with wrenches who can install the heat pump. That's our
Right.
number one limiting factor right now. Is just not enough, people with trucks. Now, what we can do is try to be more efficient with their time, but that's really down at their level in terms of how, do they need to come to a house first to assess it, or could they have a homeowner walk around with a camera and they do their assessment while they're sitting in their office and have AI? There's some new tools for that, but in order to get there, you need a Grandma Garcia who knows how to FaceTime, right? So there's a lot of like kind of human challenges along the way. We've also in New Mexico, on another note, tried to or working on upgrading our permitting along that line, so that a lot of these things they also can get bottlenecked by the various permits that they sort of need to accrue along the way, like certain heat pumps or certain panel upgrades, or I know it's not part of the show, but like solar. So we're trying to work with our local permitting authorities to allow them to use some of the AI and modeling tools that are coming out. It's slow going though, because the permitting folks are in charge of making sure everything's safe, and any new technology naturally they're going to be cautious about, and you want that. You don't want houses burning down, and so we have to kind of move at the speed of proven tech, which takes a while. Someone's got to go first, essentially.
Is there something missing that from your seat, you had a chance to sort of digest what this money can do and what it can't do? Is there something you wish it could do that you would want to be a part of the conversation for future funding that would help with home energy efficiency?
I think uh, maybe outside of the rebates or incentives themselves, I think there there needs to be a broader policy discussion, like I mentioned in Michigan, on rate design. I think that's a
Mhm.
really important tool to be pairing with upfront incentives, because then you can tackle both the upfront costs of technologies and then the operating costs. Um, so we need to be improving our rates to help design them to bring down operating costs, particularly for electric heating customers, and align our rates with the actual cost to serve those customers, as well as integrating, like I said, time of use elements, which can be modified both seasonally and hourly. Um, to help people shift their usage properly, and again better align our rates with the cost to serve those customers. So I think that's the biggest piece that um I would think to pair with these rebates, but curious to hear what Puck has to say.
Oh, I think you said it really good. I don't know what I would add other than just some very detailed wonky stuff on the ground, like roofs. There's so many times, or roofs that I don't know how you solve that, because it's not an energy efficiency thing. But and Lost my train of thought on what the other one was.
That's
Oh,
okay.
when the program was written, there are various caps for various amounts. Like you can only spend up to $8,000 on a heat pump. Well, that number was set probably now 4 years ago, and a lot of costs have risen. And so $8,000 doesn't take you as far as you want on heat pumps. So maybe some flexibility within those individual measure caps, like maybe keeping the home cap overall at 14,000, but underneath that, letting us determine, how much should go to insulation, how much should go to heat pumps. Because with the tariffs and the supply chain issues, the math is not mathing as good as it was when the program was written.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Thanks for pointing that out. I hadn't even thought about the effects of inflation on the dollar
Oh, it's
figures we're
huge.
talking about over the
Hmm.
course of years. You both, like I had mentioned earlier, doled out so many breadcrumbs that led in so many various directions, and I'm not sure we wandered to pick them all up. Is there something that you wanted to mention on the podcast that we didn't have a chance to talk to? This is your open platform right now. Kate and Puck, go ahead and take the wheel and steer me in that direction before we send it off and do a good night. Otherwise, I would love to leave the listeners and viewers with a strong takeaway, and that's, hey, I'm interested in this. What do I do next? I know the answer is different from state to state, but if you could leave them with a sort of, this is what you need to do if you want to get a piece of this pie, I think that would be really helpful.
I have to plug ourselves. I say if you're
Please.
interested in New Mexico and also you're interested in seeing how we're doing it, our one-stop shop website is cleanenergy.nm.gov.
We will put the link in the podcast post for sure.
Yeah. I think I'll just double down on what I said before. Energy efficiency is really one of the best ways for people to both save on their individual bills and also how states can bring down costs long term. Um, and I think there's an opportunity here for states to really maximize the opportunity that we're seeing with these rebates through other programs like improved rate design, like also state level incentives and utility level energy efficiency, and appliance incentives. Um, and again, we want to make sure that everyone has access to the most efficient technologies. Like Puck said, we have people that have really high energy burdens, and it's important that they can, you know, get a slice of the pie and have access to the cleanest, healthiest, and most affordable technologies long term.
Well said, Kate. And I want to thank you both for taking some time out of your day to have a conversation about this extremely important topic. You're both so knowledgeable about it. Thank you for sharing some of that wisdom with our viewers and listeners. You're obviously making an actual, tangible difference in the world and improving people's lives, and that's what this is all about, right? So bravo to both of you. Thanks again for your time. If you guys enjoyed the conversation we had here on the Factor This podcast, leave a like, subscribe, a comment, do whatever. I'm not your dad, but we do appreciate your support of the show. And if you would like to be on the show or have an issue you'd like to talk about, I'm not hard to find. You can track me down on Factor This or wherever you found this podcast. We'll make sure to get the link to what New Mexico is working on in the post, and I'm sure our friends at Advanced Energy United have something to share in that regard too. Until next time, thank you both so much for being on the show. Good luck when these funds finally come out, and hopefully you can change as many lives as possible with those dollars.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Paul.